it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. The following message was a series of papers found in a glass jar inside a quarry on top of a mound of sand in Dundalk, Maryland. They've been published here in the hopes of anyone having information on the subject below. The Vanishing City of Warmire, Colorado, by James Caligo. Part 1. I found myself thinking about the strange lights that were hanging above our city. There was something odd and otherworldly about them. They were dancing across the sky and the sun was slowly disappearing behind the tall skyscrapers. Naturally, I was unsure about this night, but a lot of my friends were fine with how things were. We were going to a party and I was going to finally get to see Samantha when she wasn't absorbed in her studies at school or art projects. So, what do you think you're going to do at the party, Jeff? My best friend and brother Jeff asked me. Looking ahead, I noticed that there was an absurd amount of traffic. We had no idea why, but as far as I could tell, people were coming outside to take a look at the sky above them. But Jeff and his girlfriend Jasmine didn't look like they were remotely interested in the bizarre light show of Aurora Borealis taking place above us. I don't know, maybe talk to Samantha? I said weakly. Jasmine chuckled. She always had this goofy laugh that made you feel warm inside. Had it not been for her dating my brother, I surely would have tried to at least strike up a relationship with her. She was so nice to me, even though I'm nowhere near the level of coolness as Jeff. She had nothing more than beautiful tan skin and black hair with pink highlights on all the edges. But most remarkable about all of her features was her violet eyes. They were naturally coloured, which I'm guessing is relatively rare. Well, I'm no eye expert. Jeff replied, "Honestly, dude, I'll give you $100 if you actually work up the nerve to talk to her." I was going to make a response to that. I was feeling slightly offended by the fact that he was implying that I didn't have the balls. I could definitely ask her out if I had the right situation. Before I could get my word out, he honked his horn furiously, cursing out the people who were blocking the road. God, these people are never going to get out of the way, are they? Who cares about the stupid space lights? He shouted. Maybe the fact we've never seen Aurora Borealis this far south might be playing a role in why everyone's out, Jasmine remarked, resting her hand on Jeff's shoulder to try and calm him down. Jeff always had this short temper when it came to strangers, but he always maintained a level of control when dealing with people that he liked. Honestly, it sometimes feels like that's the opposite with people these days. They're mean to their loved ones and nice to strangers. Without much more than 20 more minutes of trying to grind through traffic, we reached the house where the party was being held. This was supposed to be some guy named Timothy's house. I'd never met the guy, but I heard he's exceptionally nice to people. Had really light blonde hair and blue eyes that made all the girls jealous. Also, I'm told that he has an androgynous voice, which means he likes to trick people into thinking he's a girl as a joke before they actually see his boyish appearance. Gonna have to remain vigilant, lest he tried to pull that same prank on me. Stepping inside, I was met with a barrage of strobe lights, loud EDM music blasting on some surround sound system, and people so closely together you could start a pandemic from this point alone. This was definitely the type of party where you didn't want your parents to find you. Perfect for Jeff, but tons of anxiety for me. "Hi," a girlish voice called out from behind me. Already preparing myself, I turned round and acted smug. "Yeah, I'm not falling for that one, buddy." I nearly choked when I finally saw who it was. It wasn't a blonde boy, but a black and green-haired girl. Also, she appeared to be Asian, which makes you think she was likely Japanese. Yes, I know the difference. "Expecting someone else?" she questioned me with this smug grin on her face. I thought it was Timothy behind me." She brushed her hair away from her eyes, giggled a little bit before saying, "No, he's currently upstairs with his posse. He decided he's not going to stand around down here and sneak up on people. But I understand why you may have thought that." Jeff interrupted, talking to this girl in such a casual manner. "Leslie, You have any idea where Samantha might be? My brother here wants to ask her a question." I flinched and had a mini heart attack when he decided to come out with that. "Look, I can wait," I shouted abruptly. Well, a few of the people closest were giving me that look. It was so embarrassing to make such a scene. Jeff smiled triumphantly before walking away to join up with his friends. Leslie paid no more attention to what he'd said and told me, "Look, if you want to talk to Samantha, here she's hanging out with some boys down in the basement." My heart nearly sank into my intestines when I heard that. Was there something less than child-friendly going on downstairs? Well, now I was panicking, thinking that she probably is already getting herself a boyfriend as we speak, and here I am, terrified to even talk to her. I told Leslie goodbye and swiftly wormed my way through the crowd and reached the basement stairs. Down there, it was as crowded as up top. God, had this kid invited the whole school? I was finding it hard to even see where Samantha was located. And the worst part about all of this was the constant bumping into me by various strangers. Well, I have a don't touch me policy. Well, the music was loud down there, so loud that I thought I might even develop a massive headache from how obnoxious it was. Well, dubstep is obviously the worst music, right next to country. I can't find her anywhere, I whined, low enough though to make sure no one heard me. And I quickly gave up. Finding my way back to the first floor, I could already feel the onset of the headache. I looked for a bathroom where I could escape to, and thankfully there was a paper taped onto a door that said bathroom. So, throwing myself in, I quickly shut the door and breathed a sigh of relief. When I turned round, I was shocked to see that there was someone else in there. A short girl, cute looking, and with cut black hair. "Excuse me, Twig. I'm using this right now." Thankfully, she was looking at herself in the mirror. Her eyes looked red and watery. I suspected she'd been crying just now. Then I remembered. "What? I'm not a twig, I weigh..." Then I remembered I only weigh 115 pounds. "I noticed where your eyes were looking the moment you saw me. I'll call you whatever I like," she harshly replied back at me. "Oh, sorry. I wasn't trying to be a perv, if that's what you're thinking. I wasn't expecting someone to be in here." "Oh, I see." She looked unconvinced by my apology, though. Scratching my head, I quickly turned around, but realized that my headache was probably going to be irritated the moment I heard the music at full blast. And this door was the only thing muffling the sound. I don't want to go out there," I whispered under my breath, thinking about how much this was going to hurt. "You don't like the sounds out there?" She spoke much more calmly this time. Turning back to her, I replied, "No, not really. I only came here because my brother practically begged me." "Oh, I was supposed to be here with my friends, but they've run off on me. I don't know where they are." "I noticed you, seem to be a bit upset about something." "Oh, how observant." She sounded as if she was admonishing me. "Well, if you're waiting for me to leave, I'll do it." No. She changed her tone. "It's fine. Just stay over there." She clearly didn't trust me, but at the same time, she could tell that I was distressed by the loud sounds outside. Well, I looked as if any minute now I was on the verge of throwing up. I thought about how nauseating this was making me. It was getting warm and sweaty from all the people dancing, the loud, obnoxious music, and a sense of jealousy of my crush being surrounded by boys made me wish that I could be like anyone else and just enjoy this moment like my brother. Yet here I am, hiding in the bathroom with a girl who's clearly thinking I'm up to no good. Waiting for the moment where my headache would die down, I slumped to the ground, putting her more at ease. I could hear two people outside having an argument. You're such an idiot. The earth is obviously flat." "Oh God, this is gonna be a stupid argument." "Yeah, sure, buddy. You keep believing that crap. Did you not watch any videos from NASA, China, European space documentaries? The Earth is clearly round." "Hey, now, listen here." I tried to block them out. I have no interest in dealing with such stupid arguments over things that don't matter to begin with. Whether the Earth is flat or not, which I'm entirely sure it's not flat, I'm pretty sure our current problems are more around the lines of war, famine, pandemics, and those crazy world-ending events that never cease to try and end humanity. No matter what, we always find more trivial means of distracting ourselves and ignoring the actual problems. I heard that the Earth is actually a velociraptor, the girl said, cracking a soft smile at me. I smiled back, thinking about that stupid internet thing where they turn planets into anime girls. Well, I think the Earth's a donut, I said jokingly. Wow, what kind of frosting do we have? Oh, permafrost, I said swiftly. A brief chuckling erupted between us, and this actually felt more like a comfortable situation. I figured now would be the best time to introduce myself. Jack. Comet. Raising my eyebrow, I replied, Wow, that's a pretty unique name. Well, that's the cover name I go by. Don't give my real name to anyone unless I absolutely have to. I was a little bit disappointed. She clearly didn't trust me still, but then again, I hardly knew her anyway, so I shouldn't feel too upset. We quickly got to talking about other things. I found out what classes she was taking, why I'd never seen her before, and a little bit about who her friends are. She's a grade beneath me, which explains a lot about why I haven't seen her. We were now sitting side by side on the floor, ignoring the fact that it was a little grimy. We were hitting it off pretty well with the fact that we were both introverts who only hoped that we could fit in with everyone else. It felt nice to finally have someone to relate to. So, this is just an idea. Maybe you'd want to go outside for a walk. Well, her face brightened up, and she seemed to be showing me some interest in my proposal. She looked like she was about to answer, but we were quickly interrupted when a loud rumbling managed to overshadow the music. It sounded so horrendous, well, captivating and monstrous. We had to cover our ears, and I could hear people panicking outside the door. What was that? I asked, not expecting Comet to answer. Let's go check it out, she said. So Comet and I ran outside, separating when we managed to spot our groups. She ran towards her friends, and I ran towards Jeff and Jasmine. What's going on? I asked. Neither one of them answered me, for everyone was staring up at the night sky. The aurora borealis had gotten much worse. Not only had it filled the entire nighttime sky, but the bands of lights were stretching down so far they were practically hovering above the towers nearby. Then all of the lights around town suddenly went out. There was screaming from a few girls, but that was quickly drowned out when a loud, low rumbling broke through the air, sounding similar to a passing train. I had to cover my ears again because it was so irritating towards my headache. Then the ground began to wobble. Not so much that everything came collapsing down, but hard enough to where you had to stand still. And this proved to be difficult in a crowd because everyone was clinging to one another for support. Again, I don't like being touched. Hey! Jeff tried to call out to me and Jasmine. We need to get to the car. I thought the best thing we could do at that moment was to stand still and wait for the earthquake to stop. But all that changed when the sky started to bleed, and I mean, it was literally tearing itself open, ripping like paper into a dozen pieces. From the tear points, green liquid was leaking out and dripping down onto the city. A massive droplet managed to hit a few of the other partygoers, covering them. They were knocked down, but their bodies were quickly dissolving into the green liquid, which only managed to send everyone else into a panic. More of that green liquid began to fall down from the sky, and we were quick to run back into the house. Jeff was tagging behind us, trying to push me and his girlfriend into the building. At that moment, I remembered Comet. Was she still out there, getting pelted by that green slime? But Jeff just kept yelling for us to move. Once back inside, everyone was bustling about what was going on. A few girls were sitting on the steps crying, and everyone else was trying to process what had happened. Quickly, people were turning on their phones and lighting up the place to try and provide any light that we could get. With so many on, you could identify any familiar faces that you saw in the crowd. Jeff, what do we do? I looked to him for guidance. He seemed unable to grasp the situation himself. He kept scratching his head, shaking it, and when I thought maybe he'd regain his composure, he just let out a spine-chilling scream. I don't believe he was truly able to grasp what he'd witnessed, while I was too busy wondering where Samantha and Comet were. My brother went over to the corner to sit down on the couch. Jasmine was quick to try and comfort him in his moment of weakness. My brother, the most in-control guy, the most completely nonchalant, popular man in school, was now reduced to a cowering mess. That was a frightening thing for me. I'd always looked up to him, and to see him so distraught was making me feel like there truly wasn't anything that we could do to calm down the situation. "Everyone!" A feminine voice called out for attention. It was Timothy and Leslie. "Please stay inside the house until the weird stuff falling from the sky stops." I was thinking about how dumb that sounded. He got our attention to tell us what we were obviously going to do anyway. Perhaps I'm being too critical in this moment where I'm trying to grasp the situation. Of course, I was thankful that whatever that green slime was, it wasn't melting through the house. Well, that alone seemed strange, but maybe the slime only affected certain material like flesh. "Jack!" A familiar voice called out to me. I turned around and saw that it was Samantha. "Oh, hey." I was genuinely happy to see her. At least she was safe. That might sound selfish because it's clearly my desire to still have a relationship with her, but I genuinely did want her to make it through this, well, the same as everyone else. "I heard that Jeff and Jasmine were coming. Well, I'm surprised that you're here." Ouch. Well, I replied, trying to hide my hurt ego. "Yeah, well, I wasn't expecting this to be the last party I'd ever go to." She clearly felt uncomfortable with my remark, and I didn't want her to feel insecure. "Soon the National Guard and Red Cross will be here. This whole situation will be resolved as long as we remain safe." Well, thankfully, she seemed to believe that. On my part, I too believed it. It only made sense that eventually someone from the outside world would notice that a large city such as Warmire, Colorado, had suddenly been struck by a freak event involving the Aurora Borealis. I was wondering why there weren't any sirens going off, though. I mean, well, you'd think with something like this, they'd at least have tried to warn everyone ahead of time. Samantha and I huddled next to my brother and Jasmine, remaining in our corner until Leslie approached us. She was clearly close friends with Jeff, not surprising, and the look on her face was pretty grim. "Guys, we should all go somewhere private. I want to warn you, because I think you might be able to handle it best since, well, you're the only ones holding it together." She clearly wasn't paying attention to my brother. Upstairs, Timothy was sitting on his parents' bed, and he was raising his eyebrow when he noticed me. "What's he and the girl doing here?" Leslie explained on our behalf that we were close associates with Jeff. Jeff was still shaking, but looking much better now. "I'm all right now," he reaffirmed. "All right. Okay, then. What I'm about to let you guys in on, you don't tell anyone else." We looked around at each other, moved in closer. He pulled out his phone and pressed a few buttons before a message played. "Timothy," a woman's voice broke through. "Stay home and lock the door. There's soldiers, fully armored like tanks, and they're not letting us go back in. Your dad forgot something and we were coming back. Just stay home. There's something strange going on in the sky, so go to the basement if you can." For a moment there was a hesitation in her voice, as she was trying to contemplate what was going on. We looked around at each other and back at Timothy. "Oh God! God, what the... Drive away! We need to... Her screams were followed by an unearthly screeching sound that sounded like a foul beast from another world. It was so heart-wrenching because after that, the sound of crashing metal followed. The message then stopped, and there was a long silence filling the room. Timothy looked down at the floor, clearly hurting because that meant his parents were dead, or at the very least in a nasty car wreck. Jeff spoke. "Timothy, I don't know what to say." I'll worry about what may or may not have happened later. Right now, we have to deal with the current situation. Well, it seems like until someone with more experience came along, Timothy, Leslie, and Jeff were going to be in charge. Samantha and I were going to have to fill the roles of support. Back downstairs, we saw the door was wide open, and people were looking out at the green slime that was still dripping down onto the pavement. Leslie quickly started admonishing them for their stupidity. They'd already forgotten about the fact that whatever this slime was, that it kills people. One of the tall guys, clearly a football player, pointed at the spot where those people who got hit by the slime were earlier. When we all took a look, I nearly threw up at the sight of what was now in their place. God, it was so unnerving to see. Gone were the human bodies, replaced by a mass of skin and organs that were all mixed around each other into a biomass pancake on the ground. I could see the few eyes that were protruding out of the fleshy pancake, blinking, alerting me that there was still a little life left in whatever that was, whoever they were now. "Oh, that's sick," Leslie shouted. She quickly closed the door, not wanting anyone else to get hit with this stuff. Now things were truly spiraling out of control for the rest of us. I wasn't believing in my earlier statement about the National Guard, or the Red Cross showing up. Now it was starting to look more like the apocalypse for the rest of us. The only question that remained was whether this was situated in our local area, or was this range much further than we anticipated. I started to worry about my parents, wondering if they were safely indoors when this all went down. I needed to know these things. I couldn't bear the thought of losing them. I wouldn't want them to become one of those things on the ground. A few hours passed, and not much else was happening. The green slime was getting worse outside, breaking up from the giant droplets that it was originally and turning into more of a downpour of tinier droplets. Everyone was told to keep indoors, and we noticed that the plant life outside was also starting to warp. The leaves were meshing in with each other. The tree branches, in turn, started to twist themselves in, almost as if everything around us was melting. But this wasn't happening to any of the buildings. A pole with wires running through it was nearby and made of wood, but, well, it looked completely fine. I wondered if maybe it was because it was dead. Perhaps dead things can't melt together. That's a theory, at least. I wonder if my parents are okay, Samantha chimed in. I brushed this off with a wave of my hand to keep things positive. As long as they're inside, they should be fine. But don't you remember that sound on the phone? She reminded me. I didn't want to think about it. I assumed it was maybe the sound that we'd heard earlier when I was in the bathroom with Comet. It sounds similar to one another. Oh, I guess I blotted it out of my mind. She scratched her whipped-up dirty blonde hair and cleaned off her glasses. Her body movements were becoming more fidgety, and she looked as if she was on the verge of a panic attack. I wonder, whatever that was, it didn't sound like a normal animal cry. It was way too aggressive, and it makes me kind of feel a sense of dread, you know. Well, I'll be honest, the sound didn't affect me the same way. I always had a love for horror movies, particularly cosmic for being my favorite. Well, strange monster sounds weren't something I wasn't used to hearing, but upon further thought, I realized that it was much worse when you're hearing those sounds in real life. Yeah, I know, I'm a bit more concerned about that. Well, she nervously laughed, and I was also kind of laughing back with unease building up in my chest, like a bird trying to peck away out of my ribcage. But the mood had definitely calmed down somewhat. In fact, a few of the partygoers had already fallen asleep. Clearly the alcohol had gotten to them. But it felt nice. Nice knowing that I could share this slightly tender moment despite all of the horrible things happening outside. But I had to remain focused on trying to get through this night. The sky isn't exactly a night sky anymore. No, there's nothing more than green-tinted darkness that envelops the entire outside, making everyone feel on edge. Something told me that tomorrow wasn't going to be any better. But for now, I'm going to relish this moment with a girl that I've had a crush on for years, was finally more interested in staying near me than her own friends or any of the other boys here. Part 2. Well, things are already spiraling out of control. I'd fallen asleep but was stirred when I heard screaming coming from upstairs. It was in Timothy's sister's bedroom. His sister was not with us. She was travelling with his parents, but Timothy was kind enough to let the girl sleep in there. Apparently a creep who was at the party was trying to sneak in and got caught sniffing one of the girls' hair while they were asleep. When I and a few of the others reached the room, the girls had pushed the guy to the ground for his intrusion. He was about what you would expect. Fat neck rolls, fuzzy beard, and smelling like he hadn't showered in days. How he got into the party is something I can only guess at. "Get away from us!" one of the girls screamed at him, throwing one of the lamps at his face. No, I just wanted to..." And he was struck by said lamp. "Hey!" Jeff hollered from behind me, even getting me started. Everyone quieted down, respecting the overall authority of my brother. He walked in, took one look at the disgusting guy on the ground, and the freaked out women on the other side of the room. It was pretty clear what he was up to. Jeff ordered 2 of the football players, 2 of which were dating the girls, to take this guy downstairs, where we tied him to a chair. "Listen, I thought I heard something in their room, so I wanted to investigate. But it's not what you think." He tried to cover his tracks. One of the girls, a blondie with way too much makeup on, approached and stated her side of the story. "Was that why I caught you sniffing Jessica's hair?" "I wasn't sniffing it. I thought I heard something coming from her blankets, that's all. Look, there wasn't..." He momentarily lost his train of thought, wondering if what he was going to say was going to make sense. We could tell lies in the heat of the moment weren't his strongest suit. "Do you really expect us to believe that? Why didn't you get one of the others to go with you to check it out?" Timothy questioned him further. I already knew what he was thinking. Even if his story is true, which I don't believe it is, this only paints him in this sort of light. I explained. "Well, let me guess, you were hoping that if there was something in there, these girls would fall all over you and want to date you for saving them." When he snarled at me, which I had to hold in a laugh at because I've never been snarled at. This dude clearly has breathing issues. Besides that, we all knew what he was truly up to. His story didn't hold up well either, but now began the discussion of what we should do with him. One of the boyfriends of the girls demanded, "Well, let's kick him out into the rain." Well, something like that was a little unnerving to hear. This guy was basically suggesting that we kick a guy out to his death. Well, I hold no sympathy for creeps, but I wouldn't want them to become a gelatinous biomass on the ground anyway. That would make me a murderer. Unfortunately, other people in the crowd looked like they were agreeing. Samantha stepped forward and tried to plead. "Wait, we can't do that. We don't have the authority to take the death penalty into our own hands. But when help arrives and it comes out about what we did, we'll be in big trouble." Her rational thinking did manage to garner some support for her side. Then, of course, some didn't look like they cared at all. A group indifferent to this confrontation is just what we needed to keep things under control. Leslie spoke up. "We're not killing him. We're going to lock him up in the coat closet until help arrives." One side of the camp, the "kill him" side, murmured amongst themselves. They looked like they wanted to fight back, but there were a few strong eyes that were more than willing to support Timothy and Leslie. Not to mention my charismatic brother was also on Timothy's side. Well, that establishment of power had given us the advantage. For now, things were a little heated, but stable. Back in Timothy's parents' room, he was sat in his parents' bed, rubbing his forehead, clearly becoming anxious about the rising tension. "I think people are going to listen to our order," Leslie said. Well, Jeff added, "For now." I spoke up, feeling a bit more enthusiastic about my newfound level of authority, thanks to my connections with those with the popularity of the group. I wouldn't be surprised if they broke up into a rivaling group. It's tribalism now, and tribes rarely ever have any stability. Well, that's any form of society, Jack, Samantha said. I don't think that our group is sustainable now that someone has to go and rub everyone the wrong way. Well, she was right. Plus, them being teenagers wasn't going to help. As if kids are good at running a society like ours at the moment. God, how I wish that there had been an adult here to be the leader. Leslie asked for my brother. Hey, Jeff. Yeah? You still got your car out there, don't you? Yeah, but... I'm pretty sure he knew as well as I what she was about to suggest. And I chimed in. Are you suggesting that we, abandon everyone? Well, those people who want blood, they're going to grow. We don't have the manpower to sustain control over the house. I mean, who wants to listen? And I don't mean any offense to you, Timothy, but who wants to listen to a boy with a girlish voice? He gave her the, "Are you serious?" look, obviously irritated by her remark. Hey, so what if my voice doesn't sound masculine? I still wear boys' clothes. She rolled her eyes with a smirk on her face that she tried to hide from him, but I could see it from my angle. Well, Jeff interrupted. Anyway, let's try to figure a way out in case things get worse. I don't think our food supply is going to last much longer. I was more concerned about how we were still getting water. It still was coming out of the faucets, but according to Timothy, that's because he has a water tank on the top of his house. There was a power outage a few years back, and his parents didn't want to deal with that mess again, so they got a generator and water tank. We just couldn't get to the generator because it was outside, which turned out to be a bad idea. I went back down, wanting to see how everyone was doing. It was still dark, but with flashlights now it was much easier to move around. Samantha was tending to the girls in the bedroom. Jeff was maintaining a watchful eye on anyone who might be trying to get to the closet, while that creep was still screaming about, "Oh, the girls deserve it," and "we're all going to die anyway. Might as well enjoy ourselves." Well, it didn't take long for him to show his true colors. Timothy and Leslie also were upstairs, trying to figure out their next move. Jasmine was nowhere to be found, but I wondered if the basement was in any better shape. Despite the house not being too big, it seemed as if certain people were going to their respective areas, almost like civilization itself in a 2-story building. In the basement there were a variety of different people. Most notably, there were the punks, cybergoths, and generally the people who don't socialize well within the more mainstream groups of people. That's where I spotted Comet. "Hey!" I shouted abruptly, instantly getting embarrassed. She looked at me and smiled warmly. She walked towards me. Once we were finally able to reach each other near the center of the room, we could talk. "I guess you made it inside," I said. Yeah, we did. My friends ran back at the moment the sky started to tear open. Then we heard about that green slime that's been raining down." "Oh, I'm glad you're safe. Why in the basement?" I looked around. She shrugged her shoulders. "Don't care. Guess it feels safer to be further away from that rain. Well, we also heard about what's been going on upstairs. Yeah, we're a little on edge. It's not safe considering how someone had to go and mess up the stability of the group already." We walked over to the side of the room, leaning against the brick wall. I was having a bit of a moment when I was feeling terrified. With all of the commotion going on and the threat of death overhead, I had to put on this brave face and act like I was someone in control of my emotions. And surprisingly, even with my brother who'd had his meltdown a few hours back, well, he quickly regained his composure, but I don't think he truly has it. I mean, if anything, we're all wearing masks of calmness, faced with apocalyptic doomsday right outside our windows. "So, do you think help's coming?" she asked. "Yeah, of course." "Don't say that," she admonished me. "I want to hear you say it with sincerity. I'm not like some people who need to hear what they want to hear. I want to hear what needs to be said." I looked at her. She was dead serious. And even though I tried my best to convince myself that this was all going to blow over, long story short, there wasn't anyone coming to rescue us. Whatever this is, they were going to try and contain it. That's why Timothy's parents couldn't come back. That's why there haven't been any attempts to try and get survivors. We are all on our own. No, I said in defeat. She gave me a soft nod, and I could feel it in the air. A sense of dread overwhelmed both of us, knowing full well that this was probably going to be our grave. Everyone here was going to die, either by becoming biomass or from killing one another out of human division on whether or not we should kick someone out for trying to commit a gross trespass, or we're going to die from starvation and thirst. Most likely thirst. I don't think the water tank has much longer with more than 30 people in one building. I want to let you know, we're going to try and escape if things get so bad, but we have to, I told her. She looked up at me, raising her eyebrow. How? That rain will probably kill you on your way out. But before I could get out another word, a commotion erupted upstairs, and this caught our attention. We quickly ran up to the first floor. They'd opened the door again and were looking out. Leslie was there, but she wasn't so keen on getting it closed this time. That's when I noticed that there were no more droplets hitting the roof and walls outside. The rain had stopped. "Oh, look at that," the tall, muscular guy said, standing closest out on the porch. It was a good thing he was wearing shoes. When I looked out the window, everything looked different. There were patches of black slime covering all the ground. It was more obvious where the grass had been, creating green biomass. The trees had almost completely melted into their own pancake-shaped forms, made of wood and leaves now. The sky was now cleared up, and we could clearly see where we were. Up in the sky, a large swirling tunnel was passing us by, and it was clearly moving. We were going up, as it looked from our perspective. The walls of the vortex were black, swirly, and at the center was a white light that seemed to barely manage to break through the green mist in the air. It was still dark, but thankfully bright enough for us to see. "Well," Comet piped up, "looks like escaping should be a little easier now." I looked at her, unsure about this change of events. What were we going to do next? I guess we could leave, but where to? Hesitation hung heavy in the air. A lot of us wanted to take a step out, but we weren't sure what would happen the moment we were fully exposed. What if that green slime returned while we were out there in the open? But there was also the problem of people wanting to get rid of our disgraced guest. As far as we were aware, your clothing did provide you with protection if you were to touch any of the wet surfaces. The green slime apparently was absorbed into the ground, which would explain why there were no puddles. Still, that didn't bring anyone comfort. Quickly, Comet and I separated for a little bit, promising each other to meet up later in the living room. I needed to speak with Timothy and Jeff about what to do next. We'd gathered back in the bedroom. Timothy was sitting at his father's desk in front of the window, overlooking the street below, which was filling up with people who'd been hiding indoors the entire time. "So I guess our escape plan is bust," Jeff remarked. "Well, this is much better than trying to sneak out and leave a bunch of people to massacre each other." Jasmine gave him a sassy remark back. "Look, I'm not in the least bit concerned what a bunch of strangers do to one another. My only concerns are for me, you, my brother, and our immediate group here." "Well, that sounds like you're not a compassionate person." He clicked his tongue, rolling his eyes away from her. Jasmine was more concerned for the welfare of the group, but my brother was more concerned for the welfare of the people he knew. In my mind, both have their rights and wrongs. Personally, and this might be based on a biased leaning, but I prefer my brother's stance. It's much more important to care for those who are in your life than to value everyone the same. "It doesn't matter," Timothy spoke. "We can leave now, and the first thing we should be doing is going out to get a stash of food and weapons. We're going to need them." Everyone in the room was in agreement with that idea. When we came back downstairs, there were already people putting plastic underneath their clothes. Smart move. That way the green slime can't touch your skin. One of the smarter kids at the party suggested that the black slime that we were still seeing patched all over the ground and walls outside was microorganisms and insects that were merging into one another. Well, our means of action was to get into Jeff's car and start driving around for more supplies. Obviously, everyone was going to leave Timothy's house, probably go to their house to see if their loved ones were still alive, and that became the plan for us as well. But not for Timothy. He never mentioned once about going to see if his parents were still out there. Everyone else was getting geared up, wrapping plastic around their feet, putting on heavy clothing all around their bodies, rubber, plastic gloves, and whatever else we could use to cover up our faces well enough. It was incredibly uncomfortable, but better to be safe than sorry. And that's when I noticed that Timothy was hanging down one of the hallways in the dark, far away from the rest of us. When I moved closer, I could hear him sniffling. Heavy breathing was overwhelming the air around me, knowing full well that he was in the middle of crying. I wasn't too sure what to do in this situation, but something pushed me along to call out to him. "Timothy?" He quickly tried to clean up his face with his arms. What? What do you want?" "You don't look like you're doing so well." "I don't need any help." "Hey, everyone needs help sometimes." "I'm good. I'm just perfect." But his voice cracked. I understood fully what was going on. All of the pressure of having to keep the peace, the fact that his parents are probably not around anymore based on the recording, and with everyone planning to go their separate ways, I'm certain that he's worried he's going to be all by himself. I moved closer and placed my hand on his shoulder to try and console him. "I think I know what you're thinking." "You don't know that." The sobering, partial cracking of his voice made me realize he was on the verge of a breakdown. "You've been trying to hold everything together up until this point. You've always looked tough in front of everyone, but this is how you really feel, right?" No, I mean..." He couldn't continue putting up the facade. His body was shaking, and he clenched his fists tightly before turning around and resting his head into my chest. Tears moistened my shirt, and he sobbed more loudly. "I told you I was fine," he cried. He was hurting. But I can't worry about how this may look in front of others when he's in need of someone to reassure him that he's not alone. So I gave him a pat on the back, which kind of felt nice and awkward at the same time. It made me feel like I was actually able to do something for someone else for once, at least. Plus, he was shorter than me, so it made me feel a little more like the big man. Maybe this is how Jeff feels all the time when he has to be my rock during times of distress. Like when I almost thought I wasn't going to pass my grade last year. "Look, you clearly aren't," I told him. Sobbing harder into my chest, he replied, "It's not fair. I don't understand why this had to happen. I'm going to be all by myself after this." I tried to think of what else I could say. "We'll be here with you," I promised. "I'm just so tired. I was actually scared of something breaking out and having to deal with violence. I just wanted to throw a cool party for the people I liked. I didn't want to have to keep everything in. And now my parents are dead." I reminded him that he has friends here who are willing to take care of him. If he needs to, he can come stay with me and Jeff at our place. He's already taken care of us, and we need to take care of him. Plus, he's been a good leader. Doesn't give himself enough credit. He was lucky this didn't last too long, though. Otherwise, things could have gotten way worse had this reign prolonged any longer. "Oh, let's go check out the city," I said, giving him a warm smile to at least provide some comfort. "Just a few more. I want a few more minutes," he replied, pressing his head harder. I tried not to let him hear me exhale then. Am I interrupting something?" I pulled back and quickly turned around to see that Comet was standing before me. "Oh, hey," I shouted abruptly. "Having a bro moment?" Yeah," Timothy spoke up, wiping his eyes. He was giving me some reassurance. I was in a panic, but both of them laughed together as if they were good friends. Why am I not surprised? Comet also gave me a peace sign and walked away to the living room. Timothy nudged my shoulder and said, "There, I got you all warmed up for her." Was he implying that I wanted to ask her out? I mean, she's cute, but I had my sights on Samantha. But maybe I should keep my eyes open on someone else. Couldn't hurt. Stepping outside, was the first obstacle. Our group, consisting of me, my brother, his girlfriend Jasmine, Timothy, Leslie, Samantha, Comet, and 2 of her friends, along with 6 other people who were coming with us, well, this was way too much to fit in the car already. But that didn't matter because the car was covered in slime and none of us were brave enough to touch it. We didn't trust the glove since we wanted to have as little contact with the slime as possible. So we had to walk like everyone else. Stepping through the slick green and black liquid that covered the surface of everything, I was glad that none of us was starting to melt. And we put on layers and I was already starting to cook underneath these winter clothes. Timothy was merely wearing a sweater and thick black pants. He was wearing the lightest out of everyone. The girls were wearing his clothes, and Jeff and I had the larger winter clothes from his parents. At this point, I didn't care that I was wearing women's snow pants, but I did hope that I wasn't getting made fun of by the girls. It just so happened that I could fit into his mom's pants. "What's that?" Leslie pointed up ahead of us. "What in God's holy world?" Timothy muttered, still approaching the strange object, while the rest of us froze in place. In front of us were 2 masses of dark green and dark yellow sludge that was taking an indescribable shape in the middle of the street. They were growing upwards, forming 2 stems and bulging outwards from the base. "Well, they look like feet forming," Jasmine said. And she was right. Now that she put it into perspective, I could see that toes were starting to split off from one another, and all of the black sludge on the ground was moving towards it, carried by that thin green slime that was pulling them towards the feet. "These are supposed to be feet. Why do you think the rest of whatever this thing is going to be?" One of Comet's friends, a blonde woman with a blue dragon tattoo on her right arm, remarked. Timothy looked curious about the amalgamation forming in front of us. "This looks gnarly if you ask me." Then I reminded everyone, "Okay, look guys, we should keep going. I don't think we want to find out what these feet are trying to turn into." Everyone quickly got back on board and we continued to move, traveling about 4 blocks down the road. Only too quickly we heard thumping sounds further ahead of us. Jeff spoke nervously. Was that a giant footstep? It sounded like it was coming our direction, and not from the 2 giant feet way in the back. That's when I came to the realization that there were more of these creatures already, and they had clearly formed. "Look, let's just..." I stopped when another loud thumping vibrated through the ground. We looked up to see an 18-story building shaking violently before collapsing in. We ran as fast as we could to the side of the road, heading towards an old Chinese noodle shop. I quickly grabbed onto the door handle and let everyone else in till I was the last one, giving me a glimpse of what was coming through the huge plume of smoke and dust. With just one look, I saw that it had a massive brain-shaped head, 6 eyes, 3 on each side, and a very skinny neck extended. Everyone was yelling for me to come inside, as the smoke and ashes overwhelmed my vision, forcing me to close the door. We ran to the back of the room, getting behind the counter and watching as heavy footsteps shook the ground like an earthquake. Jeff was cradling Jasmine in his arms, and what took me by surprise was that Comet, not Samantha, was clinging onto me. Her eyes were watering with tears, and she looked more frightened than Samantha. I needed to be a man at that moment, and be there for those who needed me. So I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her close to me so that she'd remain calm and know that if anything happened, I'd bear the brunt of it. I looked over from the side of the counter space, looking into the darkness, but I could still see that green light through the smoke outside. 2 long, black shades moved slowly past us. Whatever the creature was, it didn't notice us or make an attempt to come after us. And so, for now, we were safe. Part 3. Once we'd gotten our bearings, we quickly left the Chinese shop. Since that moment with Comet, she won't quit talking to her friends in secret and keeping a distance from me a lot more. I'm not an idiot or some dense guy. I'm well aware that they're talking about me. Whether it's good or bad, that I'm not sure. But I hope it's not for anything bad. And ever since that moment of keeping her safe and using my body as a shield should anything have happened, I can't help but keep thinking about it every time I remember that moment. Well, the one with the monster outside. I really hope this isn't turning into what I think it might be. Regardless, Leslie suggested that we find a place to stay until we can get to mine and Jeff's house. We live further out of the way, but we have a nice home with plenty of food, assuming no one's already raided it, that is. We found an apartment building, went outside and began knocking on the doors. There were still some people inside, but they wouldn't let us in. Understandable, that green slime was on our clothes somewhat, but we needed a place that was empty. Unfortunately, all of the empty ones were locked, and we weren't sure how trying to bust in was going to be viewed by the other tenants. Thankfully, it wasn't long before there was an open one near the top floor, giving us a good view of the surrounding area. I went up to the windows, stared out at the city around us. Depression was quickly settling in, seeing how hopeless our situation was. I couldn't see that monster anywhere, a double-edged sword if you think about it. Well, for one, that means it's not anywhere near us, but on the other hand, it could be behind the building for all we know. See anything? Timothy asked, stretching his arms behind his head. No, I'd say it's okay for now. But that dark barrier sure is creepy. Yeah, I can't see what it looks like from here, but it's like a swirling smoke screen that's blocked off the entire city from the outside world. Clicking my tongue, I turned back towards the couches and prepared to get some shut-eye. Everyone had either chosen the beds or couches, but one of us had to keep watch. Timothy volunteered for the first part of the night. I was to get up next. And there was a huge problem the moment I fell asleep. I opened my eyes, looked around, and found myself laying on a mountain of arms. They were charcoal black, cold to the touch, and withered, and they kept swaying like grass until they were alerted to my presence. And they reached out and began grabbing hold of me, pulling on my legs and torso. One managed to grasp the top jaw of my mouth, and they began to pull, all of them. I kept screaming, thrashing around frantically, hoping to get them off, but it was in vain. I began to feel my bones being pulled until I woke up, screaming with a fire in my throat, alongside everyone else who was asleep. Timothy was trying to wake us up and console those who were crying. Jeff was crying. Hey, what was that? Leslie said, hyperventilating and holding onto her stomach. Timothy looked perplexed and said, I don't know. I was looking outside and all of you started screaming in your sleep. It was like you were all having a nightmare at the same time. Comet came out from the bedroom, covered in sweat and hyperventilating as hard as everyone else was. Why? Why does it all seem like we all had nightmares? Well, Jeff said, why didn't this happen the first night? Hey, Tim, how long were we all asleep? About 4 hours, I think. Well, Jasmine recollected, saying, we only slept 2 at the house, thanks to that perv waking everyone. I wondered about that guy. Did we ever let him out? The screaming started to erupt from all throughout the hallways outside. While the rest of us were recuperating, Timothy went to the door and opened it. The sounds of people in the other rooms were deafening. They were screaming, wailing, bursting out into these blood-curdling, tormented terrors that were enough to give me flashbacks of the arms again. This was a nightmare in real life. The arms were creeping in all around me, even while I was awake. I felt them slowly moving around my back and over my shoulders and under my arms. Their cold grip still lingered. I tried to ignore it and saw Samantha pacing back and forth. She looked as if she was in a trance. She kept staring around, bug-eyed, and it was starting to worry me, but I was more afraid of the other girl, one of Comet's friends. She was a goth girl, but I never got her name. She'd remained quiet throughout most of our trip, only responding if you asked her anything. She looked as if she was contemplating something, thinking hard about what she was going to do next. Hey, what did everyone dream about? Timothy questioned us. Jeff swallowed. Well, I was in a tunnel. It was dark, like an old subway system. I was walking on the tracks when I thought I heard something creeping up behind me. I turned around and a wall of people with grey skin was rolling towards me. When I tried to run away, they grabbed hold of me and started pulling me in. I remember all the kicking, screaming. Such a hoarse screeching came from those things. We looked at him, each one of us wondering. I could tell from the look of everyone that they had slightly different experiences. For me, they were the blackened hands, and I told them the gist of my story. And Comet mentioned how instead it was a giant grey head that had swallowed her. Leslie said that black bones were shooting out from the ground until one of them managed to go through her abdomen. Everyone else mentioned similar stuff. Humanoids made of grey and black skin, sometimes the appendages, sometimes being the whole body. I think none of us are going to get any sleep. Timothy made the time to give an all ill-conceived joke, though. Yeah, really funny. But I guess that means we're going to have to go back until we can get to my house, Jeff reminded me. Out? Out again? The goth girl asked. Well, duh. Leslie glared at her. How else are we going to get back to Jeff's and Jack's house? I can't. She stepped back to the other end of the room, pressing herself against the wall. Calm down, Denise. Take deep breaths. Comet held out her hands, trying to rationalize with her friend. I can't. Everyone stood back, freaking out by how messed up she was starting to look. I stared at her and our eyes met for merely a moment before she charged full speed ahead, bashing her head against the glass window, causing it to rupture. She bounced back but went for a second sprint. Jeff went in to try and grab her, but she merely lashed her arm at him, and he went down with a single hit. Well, she didn't look strong, but she hit him with a harsh strike that was animalistic, which made me wonder. I kept my distance, but I calculated that if I went for the legs, I might have a chance to stop her. Denise, stop! The other girl and Comet were pleading. Everyone was too afraid to get near her now. She took one step back and punched the glass outwards, creating her exit. Then she closed her eyes and swan-dived out of the window, leaving the whole room filled with the terrified screams from Comet and her friend, leaving shocked and baffled looks on Timothy, Leslie, myself, and Jeff. Samantha froze as if she was going to faint from the sight of this dark moment. What was that all for? Jeff screamed angrily. Not a word could escape anyone's mouths. We all pondered why a bout of insanity had taken one of us. A question without an answer. After a little time had passed, we knew that we needed to keep moving. We also knew sleeping was not going to be an option anymore. Whatever it was that she dreamt of, it had messed her up. Denise was gone, like literally. Finally, we went downstairs, mentally preparing ourselves for the horrible sights. All we found of her was a red batch of sludge that had spread out all over the pavement. The green slime had been quick to make work of her. Her flesh and organs were already becoming a flesh blob. Anybody want to say anything before we leave? I said. Comet was the first one to move closer to where a friend had died. I wish I could have done something for you. What you did was so sudden. I don't know what we could have done. But at least you're not suffering anymore. The other girl also approached and appeared as if she was praying. She didn't say anything out loud, but murmured it within her prayer. I guess it made sense that not a lot of us did much other than a moment of silence. We didn't know the girl personally, and we knew that it would take too long, and we were extremely vulnerable as long as we were outside. Well, I regrettably had to say, we should get moving. Timothy nodded and took charge by standing at the front. Jeff took to his right, Leslie to his left, and I at the back. Samantha, Comet, Jasmine, and the other girl, Tara, stayed in the center. This was a good little setup that we had, and it kept most of the girls safe by staying in the center. Except for Leslie. Well, Leslie's a bit of a tomboy. I think we only have to go a few more blocks over until we reach our house, Jeff reminded everyone. Well, hopefully it hadn't been ransacked, and our parents were safe. Not too long after saying that, we felt a huge vibration rumble through the ground. Was it that monster we'd seen earlier? I just so happened to look down at the right time and saw that the green and black slime was moving. It was sliding behind me, prompting me to turn around and take a look. My body froze instantly. Wow, jeez. Hey, Timothy asked, what's going on? He froze up like me, and everyone turned around to repeat exactly what was happening to us. Jasmine said, there's no way our luck is that bad, huh? What we were witnessing was that the green and black slime were mixing, swirling in on each other and getting taller at a rapid pace. It was becoming a shapeless mass of slimy tentacles, yellow eyeballs that appeared and then disappeared almost as soon as they come. 18 giant, ravenous mouths protruded from its surface, with jagged teeth that were malformed. On top of that, it was shrouded in an eerie green glow. An eye stalk stretched outwards and stared me down. I froze, unable to think of what it was going to do. The eye glared at me, and 8 of its tentacles stretched to grab us. We jumped towards the ground, but I became nervous seeing that my entire front half was now covered in the green slime. Oh, if any of it touches my skin, I'd start to melt. Run! Timothy screamed. The creature managed to glide across the road, forcing us to push ourselves on. The stickiness of the road made it hard to move, but when you have adrenaline coursing through your body, you do your best to ignore that grip. Running as hard as we could, trying desperately to get to our house or to a building with a top that we could hide in, we found ourselves cut off by a series of cars and armored transport trucks with a symbol that didn't appear to be of police origins. The symbol had a shield with 6 wings coming out from the side and an eye in the center of the shield, but they were all crushed and mangled, blocking the roadway. Now we were truly trapped, with only a liquor store on our right and a small grocery store on our left. Timothy and the others split off in both directions, trying to break in and see if there was a way to get to the top floors. Jeff and I took it upon ourselves to distract the abomination. Jeff saw some shards of metal, grabbed one, and started swinging it back and forth, trying to cut one of the tentacles. Back. I said back. Stay away from us, you disgusting mother... The creature then slid one tentacle underneath and wrapped itself around his legs, throwing him out from under himself. Dragging him towards one of its mouths, I jumped forward and grabbed hold of my brother's arms. Oh, please don't let go, he pleaded. I won't. I'll go with you if I have to, I told him. I'll call this a little selfish, but I had no intentions of actually getting eaten today. If I couldn't save my brother, I'd have to let go at the last second. I know that sounds wrong, but I was afraid. Afraid of whatever horrible feeling awaited both of us if we went. I didn't want to experience that, and I couldn't make such a pointless sacrifice at the expense of the rest of our group. What surprised both of us was that Timothy walked up to the monster. He was too distracted by us, and he lit a full bottle on fire with a rag and threw it right into the mouth of the creature. Its mouth exploded into flames, and it started to shrivel back from the inferno that was engulfing its mouth, releasing Jeff. I'm glad there were matches and Molotov bottles in that liquor store. Getting back on our feet, Jeff and I broke down into a peal of nervous laughter. This all came to an end when Jeff fell to the ground again. Jeff! Timothy and I shouted in unison. I rushed to my brother's aid and noticed that there was a tearing at his legs. The green slime was covering his exposed skin, slowly melting through the layers of flesh down to the bone. No, no, I shouted. Everyone quickly came over. Jasmine was just as stunned as I was. None of us knew what to do. We weren't sure what we could do. Jeff clung to my sleeves and was shaking violently. Get them to the house, he grunted. I can't leave you. You have to. That creature's still nearby, and I'm only going to slow you down. No, we'll carry you. I'll do it myself if I have to. I'll only be the cause of everyone's deaths. Go. I'm not going to debate with you on this. Every part of my body was shaking. I was experiencing the death of my brother. Even if he could still live past this, that thing was close by. I could hear it calling out. It was reminding us of its presence. I was having such a hard time breathing as I looked at my brother losing his leg as it melted into the ground. Timothy rested his hand on my shoulder and knelt down to comfort Jeff. We'll take care of Jasmine. He smiled, A small one, but it was there. Jasmine also knelt on the other side, giving him a kiss before saying the words, "I'm not leaving." "You have to." "No. Everyone I know is probably going to die. I at least want to be with the person I love most before that creature comes and gets both of us." I felt like reasoning, telling her that she should come with us, but I was smart enough not to try. Jeff, not so much. "Oh, I can't let you do that." She smiled at him through tears. "What are you going to do? Get up and stop me?" The rest of us started to take a step back. I felt so heavy in my heart as I took each step away from him. It looked like he wanted to plead with us to force her to go, but not a single one in the group could bring themselves to do it. I simply closed my eyes and said, "I love you, man." Jeff had a look of understanding. He kept clinging on to Jasmine, and they cried into each other's arms, waiting for that monster to return. I couldn't help but occasionally keep staring back to make sure that they were there. Slowly, but surely, each time I looked back, the fog that had descended all over the city slowly faded them out of view. And just like that, I couldn't see them anymore, and not a sound from them was ever heard again. No more than 10 minutes have passed and I still can't seem to find the willpower to continue. I keep thinking about maybe my brother needing me, as that creature is likely already back and attacking them yet again. I don't know if he's suffering, but replaying those events of seeing him and Jasmine slowly disappearing from my view has left me with little incentive to even go home at this point. Sure, I have to keep Samantha safe, plus the other two girls and Timothy and Leslie also want to stay with me at my house. But it feels so much more empty without him around to keep us going. Timothy spoke up. "We're getting close, right?" I replied, "Yeah, just a little further." Comet glanced at me for a moment, realizing that I was not going to be able to provide her with any sort of comfort in getting to my house. Samantha looked as if she wanted to say something to me, but refrained. Finally, we took a turn onto the road leading up to my house. I wasn't feeling too hopeful, but at least I could see my parents. Hopefully see my parents. Samantha glared up ahead. "Hey, which one's your house again?" Looking away from the ground, my eyes immediately penetrated through the thin layer of fog that surrounded us. Much to my dismay, we'd spotted my house. Well, what was left of my house. No. My voice sank into a spiraling void of despair. All hope had completely left my body as I realized even my own home was gone now. It was as if a bomb had exploded just above it, cratering where my house had been, leveling the surrounding houses just the same. My whole neighborhood was filled with what appeared to be a bombing zone, and large footprints too. What happened here? Leslie looked around, bewildered. Looks as if there was a huge firefight going on. Is there army here? Comet asked. There were more of those black armored trucks and a downed Black Hawk nearby. Same shield symbol on them. I dropped to my knees, losing all remaining hope of seeing my family ever again. Now I knew of nowhere else to flee. Timothy and Samantha rested their hands on my shoulders. Comet and the other girl hugged, realizing that it was going to be a long day ahead for us. Nowhere else to hide. A few of us suggested each other's houses, but everyone seems to be living closer into the city where all of the really weird stuff was happening. We thought the residential area that I lived in would be safer. Well, that was the idea anyway. Plus, it doesn't seem like any of the others are close to their parents, which might explain why they thought my house would be safest. My brother sacrificed himself for this. For us to reach a dead end. There was nowhere to go next. All of the other houses are wrecked. Leslie suggested something. Hey, maybe a police station, an embassy? There's got to be some sort of place with people hiding out in it. I highly doubt everyone just melted. In all honesty, we hadn't seen a lot of people over the past 9 hours that we've been walking around from Timothy's house to mine. A lot of people were probably outside looking at the Aurora Borealis when the green rain came splashing down on them. Poor suckers didn't even see it coming. Well, there's always that barrier, Timothy said. Turning towards the east, he pointed at the huge black barrier not too far off in the distance that we were surrounded by. I wonder if it's a wall or a tunnel, perhaps a cylinder-shaped dome that we were trapped in. I said, "You want to go see the barrier that surrounds us? You want to stay here until the green slime manages to get inside your clothes?" Contorting my face, a little upset over his remark, but knowing that he's right, I figured that if I couldn't save any of my family, at least I could save the rest of my newfound friends. I had to work towards something after all. It'd be stupid to give up and roll over and die. And who knows, we might actually be able to get out if we look around at that barrier. Maybe find a crack or some sort of exit. Thankfully, we managed to find a pickup truck nearby at one of my neighbors, an old red Ram, perfect for us to travel further. But first it required a wipe down on the outside so none of the green slime that covered it got in. Thankfully, there were plenty of towels in many of the other houses around the area, even though they'd suffered incredible damage. I didn't know how to drive per se, but I knew at least some of the basics. I wish my brother was still here. He was a good driver. Leslie offered to be my second pair of eyes in the passenger seat, while Timothy, Samantha, Comet, and Tara all had to squeeze in the back. Nobody wanted to sit outside. Driving around until we reached a highway that was heading out of the city, we kept our eyes trained on what was ahead of us. With each mile that we passed, a sense of dread was building up. The air inside the car was becoming more frigid, lifeless. Practically, a turmoil of anxiety and tearing of the soul from my body was wreaking havoc in my head. Getting closer to whatever that barrier is made of made me want to scream and jump out of the vehicle. I felt as if everyone was thinking the same thing, though. Timothy refuses to look up, preferring to stare at the ground the whole time. Tara looked as if she was in a trance. Leslie kept looking right up ahead, never breaking eye contact with the barrier that had everyone trapped in, while Samantha and Comet were holding hands. They too were looking at the ground, worried about what we were about to face. "Hey, are you guys sure you want to do this? We can always turn back," I said with a broken voice. I didn't want them to think I was becoming afraid. I had to be the man who had to look like he was brave and ready for anything. But I'm not that kind of guy at heart. This is a face I'm putting on. No one said anything. They just looked around, waiting for the others to speak up. Finally, Comet broke the silence. "Yeah, I want to get out of here." "Don't worry. Maybe we could drive right through it. Looks like a fog if you ask me. Like some smoke that's swirling around us." I tried my best to sound positive. The barrier stretched all the way up, leaving a small opening of light at the top. But it was a green-tinted light, like seeing the green light of a traffic signal in the middle of a thick fog without any other source of light around. It illuminated every surface around us, making it difficult on the eyes. Finally, with not too many other cars that blocked the path, we reached the end, but were shocked by what we saw at the edge of the barrier. A massive pileup of semis and other cars blocked the way, as if they turned around in a haste but were unable to make it. "Well, perhaps we need to walk the rest of the way," Leslie suggested. As much as I didn't want to be walking out in the middle of a road that didn't offer many shelters besides a gas station that we'd seen 2 miles back, we had little choice. There was no way to go around because there was a steep hill on one side and melted trees on both. And no, driving through them wasn't an option. It'd be like hitting actual trees. I was the first to step out and walk through the carnage of twisted metal and more of those fleshy pancakes that littered around. Tara stuck her face closer to one of them, and 6 eyes opened up all over it, staring right back at her. 3 mouths opened and gasped for air. "Hey, I think I'm going to stay back from now on." She scuttled over to Comet. After all this had been happening, and it being a day or so, I wanted a smoke. I had been hiding my habit from my parents, but my brother had found out. I told him I'd quit, but that was a lie. Now that it's just me, I could easily get away with it. But I hadn't brought any along with me. The stress of all this was killing me. Samantha walked beside me. "You doing all right?" Yeah, I'll do fine. I'll get by." I I wonder if maybe Jeff and Jasmine were able to find some help. Not making eye contact with her, I exhaled. Oh, I doubt it. I hated how pessimistic I was acting towards her. This was my crush, after all. But I'd lost my family, and now I'm having to take care of a bunch of people with whom I'm not particularly close friends with. I mean, we'd grown close over the course of recent events, but I wouldn't say I'm ready to open up to anyone, even my crush. But it did feel a little nice knowing that she cared. Thanks, I said, walking up ahead to take the lead. For what? Well, for caring. I looked back. Samantha gave me a soft smile in return. This warmed my heart a little bit because she looked so cute. Well, like an adorable, nerdy girl who's into art cute. I noticed Comet was staring at us. Her facial expression was hard to read, but she was looking at Samantha with an unflinching stare. Oh, honestly, I hope this isn't turning into what I think it is. But this warm moment was over when we reached the barrier. It was about a 10-minute walk, but we finally reached the end. Does anyone want to try going through that? Leslie pointed at the swirling fog that was flowing past us. Well, I ain't doing it, I replied firmly. There was something ominous about it. The way it slowly crawled, swirling, not resembling a faded haze, but more like dancing strips of clouds and smoke. And there was an echo coming from within, a moaning sound, black and grey, deathly and sorrowful. Nothing about this felt real. It felt as if it was an evil in a dream, so bitterly evil. But then again, it didn't seem like it was just malevolence incarnated. No, it was as if it was more foreign to our human comprehension. Trying to understand whatever was dancing in the smoke was something that I didn't think a single one of us could grasp. Looking at it too long made you feel as if you were in the middle of aging rapidly. Is there anything that we could throw in there to see if it's safe to cross through? Comet suggested. Looking around, we tried to see if maybe there was a stray dog or cat or some wild animal that we could watch cross over. But other than barren land with black sludge and green slime everywhere, there wasn't anything else that we could use. None of us were willing to sacrifice someone in the group to see if it was safe or not. But at the same time, we didn't want to go back. That was also certain death. Hey, Tara piped up. What? Leslie, who's standing closest to her, replied. I think I can see an opening. She spoke softly. Well, this was getting everyone's hopes up, but what exactly was she looking at? When I looked in the same direction as her, I saw nothing but the same darkness. What are you talking about? It's not open anywhere. Look! She had this crazy smile across her face, her pupils losing their light, resembling a dark void that could make you fall forever into. Looking back again, I kept my focus, but my expression of curiosity quickly turned to dread when I could see something. Timothy was standing closest to the barrier, but had his back turned. Didn't see that a pair of grey and black arms were extending out, ready to grab him. Timothy, behind you! I shouted in my panic. Turning around, he jumped back as quickly as he could, but a few of the arms had managed to grab hold of his legs. They were stretching out, crawling up his body as they grabbed onto his clothes and were forcibly dragging him into them. Samantha, Leslie, Comet, and I rushed to his aid, but not Tara. No, she walked towards the black fog, her arms open wide. We were shouting for her to snap out of it. Clearly she was under some sort of hallucination. Her face was content with what she was about to do. A part of me wondered if maybe this was how we got out. No one wanted to let go of Timothy, but at the same time, I could tell we wanted to rush to her. I'm free, she said right before walking into the barrier and crossing into the darkness. We watched with a great anxiety that had stricken us, delaying our rescue of Timothy, but preventing him from being pulled in. Her face. At first it had this huge smile, only to slowly melt into extraordinary fear as she screamed out and was grabbed by all of the arms. The clouds did break for a moment as we were able to see what was laying beyond the fog. It was beyond nightmarish. What we all got a glimpse of was a massive mass of inhuman creatures that stretched so high up, made of a swirling mass like gelatin, only black and grey mixing together, forming twisted bodies that wrapped in and out of each other, stretching out arms to grab whatever got too close. Their faces were contorted, some squishing in on themselves, some expanding out until they became nothing more than a gooey slime that would re-morph into more faces and bodies. Their eyes were gone, hollowed out like a skull. I looked away, but I could hear Tara screaming as they dragged her into the slimy mess, drowning her, filling it with a torment that I did not believe that we should look upon. Now, more than ever, I was finding myself with religious feelings. I was practically praying to God that we would survive this nightmare of a world that we were in. Comet was so disturbed that she let go of Timothy to slowly crawl over to where her friend had been. The arms lessened their grip, maybe because one of us already passed through. So with enough strength, we were finally able to pull Timothy away from them. Then my attention quickly went over to Comet, worried that she might get too close. But she never did. She clearly knew better. Part 4. We were beaten, broken, lost. Not willing to even drag my feet forward anymore. Only 5 of us left. One by one I keep watching someone die. And despite everything that I've tried, despite all of my ideas on how to escape, well, they just don't work. Almost feels like everything I try has been a painful waste. Breathing becomes more difficult. What have I done? A world that's against me. What can I? A mere human who is not strong, fast, smart, or resourceful. What can I do? When we got back to the truck, we were surprised to find it crushed under a large footprint. Well, this only served to demoralize us more so. And so we kept walking back down the road, hoping that another car could be found. But this calm was interrupted. "Guys," Lizzie spoke up. Timothy asked, "What is it? Is that a rain cloud?" I looked up away from the hard concrete to see clouds slowly descending towards us, with a strange green haze that was a sign of death coming. "We should probably find somewhere to rest for now," I suggested urgently, pointing towards the gas station nearby. Everyone quickly ran to take cover. We shut the door tight, grabbing what heavy racks we could find to push in front of the door. Thankfully, it didn't have the huge glass windows, which would have left us completely exposed to the outside, so it felt safer like this. Plus, there was food and water. Quickly, Timothy was filling up a backpack with the chips and other snacks. Leslie was getting what non-edible supplies she could find. Samantha and Comet didn't have anything to do because I honestly believe that this has taken more of a psychological toll on them. I, for one, was always told by my dad that you need to stay strong. If you have people who are relying on you, you need to keep a stiff upper lip and never let them see weakness. Well, how I wish my brother was here. I hate that all of this is slowly starting to roll towards my way, and I'm growing quite weary myself. Samantha saw me and approached. Her beautiful blue eyes focused on me. Again, it felt good that she was taking an interest in me. This was my crush after all, and I was going to see it to the end that we make it out alive, or at least share my first kiss with her, whatever happens. "Are you alright?" "Tired." "Yeah, same." Talking was more difficult. I'm sure we both knew what I was going to say, but we both knew how bad that would be. Sleep deprivation was starting to take its toll on me, becoming constantly tired out from all of the running, trying to look over your shoulder, and the fact that you'll get a nightmare if you even think about closing your eyes for a wink. "Maybe we should get some sleep tonight," she rasped. I was practically giving her a cold look, unintentionally. "Oh, I wouldn't. Not unless you want to risk it. I mean, it drove that one girl insane." Quiet was quickly overwhelming both of us, and I didn't want to talk anymore. I hated this. I hated the fact that I had to defend everyone here. Oh, it was embittering. My whole life being torn to shreds by this. My family's dead. My friends are dropping like flies, and to think it was only a party that I wanted to go to. Nothing cruel, nothing wicked. Nothing devious, just a party and a magical night to enjoy as we grew older. "Hey, it's raining," Comet announced, staring out of a window behind the cash register. We rushed to the door to see if the rain was the same as the first one. And sure enough, green slime. And if it touches any organic matter, it turns you into a pancake of flesh, bones, and organs. "Oh, I need sleep," I mumbled. A part of me was thinking maybe it'd be better if I was driven into insanity. It'd be a lot better to die that way. Samantha burst out screaming, which sent everyone into a shocked panic. She was backing away from the window, running towards the bathroom door. Everyone was wondering what that was about, until we turned back and saw exactly what she was screaming about. There was something out there. It was moving like a silhouette in the rain, lingering like a ghost. It was tall, bipedal, and had the same shape of the head as the creature I'd seen back in the city. "Oh, shit," I said quickly, backing away from the window. I'm guessing everyone else saw. We all quickly went to the back of the building to huddle. Oh, this was agonizing. If it sees us, we're dead, no doubt about it. It could tear this gas station apart and we'd be exposed to that rain. This could end up being our grave. "Hey, do you think it saw us?" Timothy whispered. "Oh, I don't. Well, maybe not." Then we heard a vibration shake the ground. Timothy's jaw dropped. Footsteps that were getting closer with each passing second. It was coming towards us. We held our breaths, waiting for what might have been death knocking on the door. We looked towards the window. I was between Leslie and Comet. Samantha was at the far right near the bathroom door, and Timothy on the left next to the register. We stared through the green slime that was coating the glass, anxiously waiting for something to happen. "Well, maybe it's gone," Comet said. But the ground shook violently and the entire building along with it. Chunks of the ceiling were breaking off, falling towards the center of the room, until a large, gaping hole had been created. Samantha tried to hold back a scream, but it wasn't enough. A reflex overtook her, and dozens of tentacles descended through the hole, picking up all of the cans, chips, and soda bottles that were scattered all across the white marble floor. One of the tentacles was lingering towards us. It was a dark pink, slimy, and was throbbing with veins. It looked cancerous, with massive layers of tumors covering it. God, is this what this thing was? Was it cancer cells that formed into a single life form? Now, I'm not a genius, nor do I know anything about what's going on, so this was just a guess. Well, we were nearly about to scatter as the tentacle lingered over us, dripping with green slime. I was frozen where I was, about ready to puke over the smell of this thing. Just imagine being trapped in a porta potty, an old one that never gets cleaned. Well, that's this thing. The acid was boiling over in my throat, and I could tell everyone was feeling the same. "God, that stinks," Leslie muttered. I just wished everyone would shut up for a moment, let it pass, but that wasn't to be. Ironically, it would be me that couldn't hold it in. I threw up. It overwhelmed me and I couldn't breathe any more of this nauseous gas. The tentacles began to freak out. They whipped around, thrashing through the racks of supplies and food, definitely ruining any chance of us having an extended stay here. Everyone was quick to duck from the many pieces of metal that might come ricocheting towards us. That whole time I could hear screaming from both sides of my ears. I was speechless, unable to mutter a sound out of fear. I thought about sacrificing myself, maybe save everyone from a horrible fate should this thing get its tentacles around them. But that wasn't because it was starting to pull back. Oh, another sound of a moan broke through the air outside. Something had called out to it, and the sound of this creature replied with a great aggression in its tone. It was retreating, much to our relief, but we celebrated too quickly. When we finally worked up the nerve to get up, Leslie did not. We hadn't noticed yet, but she had. A shard of metal was lodged into her stomach. Timothy got back down towards her side. No, Leslie. She wasn't responding, but not dead. I took another look and saw a green slime covering the metal bar lodged into her. Oh, she's gonna melt, I said grimly. You don't know that, Timothy fired, his eyes tearing up and his mouth baring his teeth with anger. I felt so much guilt. Had I held out a little longer, had I just not let that smell get to me, now I'd cost someone their life. I didn't. Timothy consoled her as the area around the green slime was starting to liquefy, causing the hole to grow bigger and more blood to spill out. She coughed, unable to speak. She held up one hand and gently rubbed it against Timothy's face. He cried more profusely. She pulled him in closer, just a little gently, and the two of them locked each other into a hug. He sobbed hard and she remained stoic, but just like that, her hand dropped and she went limp. Her eyes became lifeless. I couldn't say anything. None of us could. Again, I felt like all of this was for nothing. What made this worse was that the guilt was now on me, all because I couldn't hold my stomach in. Timothy, He quickly turned around and grabbed me by the collar, his eyes streaming with tears down his cheeks. Gritting his teeth, he pulled me closer and then threw me back hard. I crashed against the counter. Okay, look, yeah, I deserve that. You deserve a lot worse. He lashed out at me. I was expecting him to proceed to hold me down and begin pummeling me, but Samantha and Comet were quick to try and block him from getting any closer towards me. Get out of the way, he raged. Comet said calmly, think this through. I know you're mad, but this isn't going to help at all. We need each other. No way I could ever be in a group with him anymore. We never told any of you this, but look, we loved each other. Samantha replied, well, yeah, we kind of got the gist of that. Oh, screw you guys, just leave me alone. He quickly went back to Leslie's body, pressing his forehead against hers. Not a single one of us could muster up the strength to talk to him anymore. I walked as far as I could to the other side, trying to avoid the rain that was now dripping in. 3 long, agonizing hours passed. Timothy doesn't talk to anyone anymore. I'd lost all reason to continue on with this. There's no way out. We have a limited supply of food and water. The rain won't quit, and there are monsters of incomprehensible imagination running around. At this point, perhaps I should embrace the green slime and become one of those blobs. Jack, Samantha calmly ushered. Yeah, we can't stay here much longer. Why? She slowly pointed towards the part of the store with a huge gaping hole in the center, and I took one look at the ground from where the green slime was building up. It was evaporating into steam. Green steam. Oh, that's not good. Grabbing some more plastic bags that we could find that were dry, we wrapped them over ourselves, trying to cover up as much of our bodies as we could. Timothy did not join us. He never left Leslie's side. Her entire bottom half was practically all melted away at this point, and it was slowly making a crawl up her torso. Timothy, man, I struggled to find the words. Go, he said coldly. Comet replied, You'll die if you stay here. He looked back at us. His eyes were empty of any hope. I don't care. My family's gone. I have no other reason to keep going. Leslie was the only other person I was close to. I wanted to be her hero, and now she's dead. I'm done with fighting to live. I couldn't say anything. None of us could. So I did what I had to. I opened the door and turned my back towards him. Look, take care. I think both of us knew that this was where he decided that his journey would end. He'd lost all hope. I think he wanted to be with Leslie to the bitter end, like my brother and his girlfriend did. You too, he said back, giving me a glimmer that he was understanding of the hopelessness we were in, but also not holding a grudge as much towards me anymore. I stepped out first. wondering if I'd feel any of the green slime touch my skin. Thankfully, the clothes and plastic wrapping were giving me the added protection that I needed. But I was worried about that steam. Breathing that stuff in might actually start to cause the same effect. I don't know, but why take the chance? "Where to next?" Comet asked. Well, I couldn't see well. The green slime was limiting my field of vision. "Let's see if we can find a car. Maybe we can go back into the city and hide somewhere." We kept on the road, passing by dozens of broken down vehicles. They were either crashed on the side of the road, or into each other. I wasn't sure how much longer we could handle being dumped on by all of this rain, and the steam was starting to pick up. A green fog was starting to lift out from the ground, and I was becoming increasingly aware about breathing problems. "Look, maybe we could, I was interrupted when I lost my footing and nearly plummeted into a sinkhole in the middle of the road. It must have been new because this was the same road we'd come from when we went to the barrier. I quickly managed to grab hold of the edge. Samantha and Comet rushed over to grab me. Finally, I was lifted back up. I'm more surprised that it snuck up on me. "Whoa, now that was a close one," I gestured. "Very," Samantha answered back. "Why do you think the sinkhole's here?" Comet asked. "Well, I'm not so sure. Could be because of all the rain." We took a look down at the bottom, and for a split second, through the black haze, I saw something. Light. A brief shimmer of it cracking through the darkness. "Hey, wait, are you guys seeing what I'm seeing?" The look on the girls' faces was a smile that was breaking through the tears that were starting to form. We saw a blue light on the other side. Somehow, on the other side of this sinkhole was the way back home. Back to Earth. At least that's what I was thinking. "Hey, we can go down there and escape this nightmare," Samantha eagerly said, practically already wanting to make her descent. "Hold on. Shouldn't we go tell Timothy? Or maybe other people trapped here?" I suggested, but Comet rebuked. "He doesn't care. As much as I don't want to leave him behind, he wouldn't come with us anymore. He hates you right now." She pointed at me. Well, I wanted to fight with her on that, yet a part of me felt like it was true. "Oh, that's not untrue." "I'm sorry, Jack. This is my only chance of getting out of here," Samantha replied. "I'm not going to wait for the others." Well, I had to concur. We can't just go around telling everyone in the city about this sinkhole. Not unless one of us wants to stay behind and tell everyone. But then we might die in the process. I was faced with a dilemma. Do I choose the unselfish route, warn any survivors about how there might be a way out, but run the risk of dying from the slime and monsters? Or do I take my opportunity right now and get back to the safety of Earth? Before I could even come to that decision, we were interrupted again. A low groaning roar boomed from behind us. It was one of those giants again. It had spotted us, and it was coming at us at full speed, its large mangling claws completely extended to tear us to pieces. "Well, looks like the hole is our only option," I remarked. Getting down was going to be a problem, though. It was probably somewhere between an 85 and 90-degree drop. I had to admit jumping down didn't look so safe either, but we were wasting time as this creature came charging towards us, thanks to that hesitation. Flashes of lightning illuminated all around us, revealing what kind of monster we were up against. It was a beast of evil incarnate standing on two legs. His body was a dark, sickly yellow color, more than 100 feet tall, and had 4 long, loosely fitted skin arms. A tail with bone protrusions, roughly half the size of the entire monster's body. Its head was supported by a crooked skeletal neck. And on top of that, it had a face that made me feel like I was on the verge of an aneurysm. It was twisted skin, tendrils dangling from a mouth filled with bloody, jagged teeth and gum shredded by those same teeth. And a head that was shaped like a human skull, an abomination born from the microorganisms of our world. At least, that's my theory. As I was about to say screw it and jump straight into the hole, it quickly turned around and swung its tail down, separating me and Comet from Samantha. It proceeded to swing the tail towards my direction, but I quickly grabbed Comet's arm and we dropped down to the ground as the tail swung over us. "Jump!" I shouted to Samantha. She appeared like she was about to disregard what I said and come to our rescue, but stopped when the monster let out an agonizingly loud screeching sound that managed to induce temporary deafness onto us. We held onto our ears, and I watched as the creature stomped the ground hard, causing Samantha to lose her footing and fall into the hole. I crawled to the edge and watched as she slowly descended into the darkness, falling into the center where the light was. When that happened, everything seemed to be in slow motion. It was as if I was on the verge of death itself, and my body's adrenaline was giving me all this time to spend. I yelled, although I could no longer hear. "I love you." She must have been able to read my lips because she also said something. "Me too." The light disappeared before she reached the bottom, leaving her to vanish into the darkness, and leaving me to wonder what her fate was. Turning onto my back, the creature knelt down and glared at me with its red eyes. They told me two different stories: predatory glare and agonizing pain. It opened its mouth up, revealing the tendrils to me, preparing to devour. I froze, unable to find the will to move anymore. Samantha was probably safe, but I still wasn't sure what more I could do for Comet. She was not in the creature's line of sight and was trying to decide what to do next. Leave me to my fate and jump, or try to assist me by getting the monster's attention. I didn't want her to do that. By then, my hearing and, I'm assuming hers as well, had returned. "Run, Comet," I shouted as hard as I could, and the creature lunged at me. But before it did, another flash of lightning shattered through the air and rain, striking the creature in the back. It let out a painful moaning and stepped to the side on the edge of the hole. I watched as the ground around its foot began to crumble and it lost its footing. The ground cracked and heaved, breaking apart and tugging the creature's leg down with it. It raised its head defiantly to the storm, slowly sinking into the abyss in the process. Collapsing all the way down, and with a final low rumbling roar, it was gone. And unfortunately, it managed to collapse the edge of the sinkhole, burying the exit. But the joy of having it out of my hair was exhilarating. I was unable to process how lucky we were. I slowly started to chuckle. My chuckling turned into laughter, and that turned into hysterical crying. Finally, this creature was gone, and we could take our leap as well. "Jack," she spoke with a sorrowful tone. I looked back at Comet, my eyes widening when I saw what had happened. The lower part of her pants were torn open, covering up with green slime. I ran as quickly as I could, feeling a slight pain in my legs. I caught her just as she was about to fall to the ground. "Hold on, I'm gonna..." She held her hand to my mouth, giving me the look that told me enough. She knew it. I knew it. This was as far as she went. "I don't feel right. Everything feels unreal, like I'm floating through jello." She was shaking. I pulled her close, ignoring my own safety. "I'm here. I'm right here." Her arms gripped tighter around my back. She spoke with a whisper now, like the air was escaping out of her lungs. "Please, survive. I'm sorry." I felt her grip loosening and her head fall back, and almost as soon as she stopped moving, her face started to melt. I watched in horror as every layer of her body turned into a slimy, fleshy mound. I didn't want to leave her side, and so I stayed out there for an untold number of hours, completely exposed. I didn't care if I melted too. I'd lost everyone, and I waited there until the rain stopped. If I survived it, I was going to make a promise. A promise to her, Samantha, wherever she was, and to my brother as well, and all my other friends. I stayed long enough to see that she was reduced to the same fleshy pancake form as every other human being that I'd come across. I wondered if maybe a part of her was still alive in there. I wanted to pick her up and perhaps hide somewhere with it, but that would be disrespectful. And then the rain stopped, and I had my choice decided. I got up and walked back towards the city. The sinkhole was covered, but maybe I could go and inform everyone else. possibly that we could unearth it and escape. I can't bear the thought of letting hundreds of men, women, children and babies be turned into what Comet and so many other unfortunate people have become. I don't think I want to live with that sort of guilt weighing on my conscience, well, as it would if I left now. When I got back into the city, I discovered more holes over the weeks. Regrettably, they're either buried over by too much dirt or sand, or are too small to fit through. But I keep trying to inform others about the big one. So far nobody seems willing to go unless we have a large crowd together. I'm not much of a leader, so hopefully someone braver will come along and inspire the hope that we've lost. Well, as I finish writing this, I'm going to throw it in through another small hole that I found in the basement of some large tower. I'm hoping that, if you find it, you'll know that I'm trying my best to do the right thing, for my friends' sakes. Goodbye. Well, an epic nightmarish tale that was, and as ever with these giant stories, I am completely exhausted now I've finished reading it. Gonna go have a cup of coffee or something. Well, I hope you enjoyed that one. Insane, mad, manic, weird, delightful, and loads of other adjectives as well. Really, really great story. Thanks to the author, James Caligo, for that one. Thoughts, feelings, anything else you want to write in the comment section below the video, and as ever, I'll do my best to get involved in the conversation. That was a big one. But I am back again with a podcast tomorrow night over on the second channel, so I please hope you will join me again there. Till the next time over here, though, very, very sweet dreams, and bye-bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.